Hey, what's up everyone, it's your girl Brainy Shanae, and today I'll be sharing with you my January mid-month wrap-up, so please stay tuned. And I am back, and also if you're new to my channel, welcome. So like I said before, I'll be sharing with you my January mid-month wrap-up, and I'll just let you know, FYI, I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice is going to go in and out, but hopefully you don't mind that at all. So let's go ahead and get started with the first book, and that is going to be The Forgotten Girl by India Hill Brown. This was one of the first books I have read in 2022, and I'm glad that I finally read this because I know the second book came out this month. I think it's The Girl at the Lake or In the Lake, something like that, which I do have on Hoopla, so I plan on reading that possibly maybe later this month or earlier in February. But this book follows Iris and her best friend Daniel, and they come upon a grave as they're playing in the snow, and it's a forgotten grave, and it's also a segregated grave, and they're trying to figure out who Avery Moore is and, you know, why was she forgotten. And it goes into a great history of how back in the day, how there were segregated graves, and sometimes they were even forgotten and not honored, and the people were forgotten. And so Iris made an idea to make it a project and to discover forgotten graves, and also the people that were forgotten to be unforgotten and to be remembered. So we have this book where we're featuring Iris, and she also sees ghosts, and the ghost is Avery Moore, which was the forgotten grave that she stumbled upon. And Avery is like, I need somebody, I'm tired of being forgotten, please don't forget me. And you know, Iris is trying to figure out why Avery is haunting her, you know, and trying to not be forgotten. And then we come into more aspect of it where Iris's best friend Daniel, his grandmother was actually Avery's best friend, and she was forgotten. And you know, Daniel's grandmother apologized to Avery and said that we will never forget you. And so that's where we pretty much end the book, where after she does this project, she makes it a well-known project, and she continues on finding segregated graves and forgotten graves, and you know, and to bring the people into remembrance of who they were and who they were, and their families and stuff, and you know, and stuff like that. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because I really enjoyed this book. It is a middle grade, and I'm so mad that I waited so long to read it, but I'm glad that I have finally read it, and I really enjoyed this book. I actually love the cover as well. It is beautiful. But Iris, she's definitely a sweet girl in this book, and I just loved it, and I really enjoyed it. But yes, this was the first book that I read in 2022. The next book was my highly anticipated reads of 2021, which I didn't get a chance to read it last year, so I read it this year, and that is Gilded by Marissa Meyer. This is pretty much like a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and we're following Serilda, who was cursed, and she comes upon a king of the Earl King, and she lies to him saying that she can spin straw out of gold. And spin straw and make it gold, whatever. And she lies and says this, and so he puts her to the test to see if she was lying or not. And I will let you know, she is known throughout the village of being a known liar. But the truth of the matter is, what the story she foretells, but she's a great storyteller, which all the village children love about her, is that her stories end up being the truth. But she doesn't know that until the very end of the book. So as she is trying to figure out how can I make this straw or spin this straw into gold, she comes upon a Voltergeist who is called Gild. That's what he prefers himself to be called, Gild. And so he says, okay, in order for me to do this, you have to pay payment. So she was giving him payments, and the next thing you know, when the Earl King told her to spin more straw out of gold, she said that she would give her firstborn child to him. That was her way of payment. So she had to keep that. She has to keep that promise. But then again, she's trying to figure out this palace that the Earl King is residing in at this moment. And she's trying to figure out who lived here before the Earl King took over. And as she tries to discover the history of it, she realized all the names of all the people of the kingdom, everything were erased. It was forgotten. It was just erased from history. And then come to find out, Gild is the prince that lived in this palace a long time ago, but was cursed. And so Cyrilda and also Gild start to have this love interest. And I love the fact of this book. I really, really enjoyed it. But I believe I gave it, I think I gave it a 3.5 out of, or 3.5 or 4 to 5 stars. You can check on my Goodreads. The only thing that I did not like, it was very repetitive. I feel like it could have been cut short, because this is, it's not that long, but it's long enough. And I felt like it didn't have to be this long. I think a lot of things could have been cut out and left out of the book because it was unnecessary, but I still really enjoyed, the story overall, and the love interest between Gild and Cyrilda. I really, really love that. And then also we find out that she is with child at the very end. And the next thing you know, the Earl King is professing that the kid is his and that Cyrilda is going to be his wife, and yada, yada, yada. It just gets crazy at the end. Like, it really picks up towards the middle and the end of the book rather than the beginning, which it was lagging a little bit. Like, it was just like, oh my gosh, just keep hitting me, in the head. That's how like treacherous it was to like get through the beginning of this book, because it was just too much. It was too repetitive, and it was just very, very slow. But like, I really enjoyed the story. I'm going to continue on reading the series for when the next book comes out. So yeah, I do look forward to seeing what Cyrilda does, as she is pregnant with Gild's child, but also she made a promise to Gild that she would give her firstborn child to him. But who knows, we will see what happens. This was really a cute story. But yeah, if you plan on reading this, I suggest you do so if you're a huge fan of Lunar Chronicles and stuff like that by Marissa Meyer. This is definitely a book you should pick up, but I will warn you, it is really slow and very, very repetitive at the beginning of the book. So we have this one. This is another book that I read earlier this month in January. Next book that I read, which I actually won't pretty much give you a review about this. You will see this already, so you can watch the video after this one. But that is Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, and this is by Kathleen J. Kirkwood. I was on a book tour for this book, so I will leave the video up above in the card so you can check that out. But I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars automatically, like hands down. So definitely check out that video after you watch this one. So we have that next book. I read this to my kids, and that is I Am Every Good Thing, and this is by Derek Barnes and Gordon C. James. It's creators of Crown and Ode to the Fresh Cut. And my son is the one that really enjoyed this the most. I actually loved the pictures. I actually loved this as well, of all the children's faces, of different colors and complexions. Like, I really enjoyed that. And then it goes into saying that I can be anything I want to be, regardless of what you portray me to be, which I really enjoy that aspect. Even right here, it says, I am a gentleman and a scholar. I am kind and polite, like yes ma'am and yes sir, helping my grandmother cross the street and saying bless you when a stranger has to sneeze. Like, I really, really enjoyed this book so much. It was spreading love of especially Black boys, of how they can be anything that they want to be, and that they are more than what society portrays them to be. And I really, really appreciate this book. Like, I feel like this is the first book that my son really appreciated the most out of all the children's books I read, to him and to my daughter, and he really just loved this. He had me keep reading it over and over again. And he even told me this was his favorite color. This was his favorite book that he has that I have read to him. But yes, I really enjoyed this book. Of course, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed it, and also my son enjoyed it, so definitely got to give it 5 stars. But here's the other book that I read. And then the next book that I had read was on audiobook, and I was happy to read it on audio. Audiobooks are a godsend. It's really helpful, especially when you have other things that you got going on and you need to multitask. So this next book that I read is the Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I'm actually going to be doing a live, I believe, on the 19th, where we will be discussing more about it. But I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I know a lot of people I know a lot of people that either loved it or hated it, and at first I was in the middle, but then I really, really love this book. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. We're following pretty much 3 women. We're following Caroline in the present day, and then we're also following Eliza and Nella in the 1700s. So it was very interesting about the history of the apothecary, Nella, and how that she was in charge of the apothecary, and that what she wanted to do was pretty much take care of women, and if women was done wrong by men, she gave them ways to get rid of the men, pretty much. Just one, but then something happened that just didn't go well. And then you had Eliza, that was a 12-year-old who just pretty much wanted to help Nella with the apothecary, but Nella didn't want her to be a part of that. She wanted her to have a normal life and not be part of the apothecary, but Eliza found ways to do that, and it just did not end well. And then we have Caroline in the present day, who, you know, had a lot of dreams, but she settled down. I mean, she settled and she married her husband named James. Next thing you know, she finds out that he has cheated on her, and she doesn't know how to take it. But then next thing you know, he was on some shenanigans and he decided to poison himself. That way Caroline can come to his rescue, and she would feel like, you know what, maybe I should give him another chance. He just been through this ordeal, but she didn't fall for that crap, which I was happy that she didn't, because that doesn't like it doesn't even up to like, okay, you poisoned yourself, but then you also cheat on me. Like, I'm still gonna remember that. I'm just gonna forget it, you know. And I think like her husband James, he was very naive, and his excuse was, you know what, it's just our lives were just boring. That's what he pretty much said to her, like, our life's been boring, and nothing's been exciting since we got married, and yada yada yada. And you know, Caroline was like, well, I thought our marriage was was great. You know, I stopped doing this to work for my family's farm and stuff like that, and we were trying to have a kid. And he was like, no, it just wasn't it for me. I was like, she's like, I sacrificed all this for you. And he said, I never told you to. So I'm glad Caroline like said like, nah, no more, we're done. Like, I love that about Caroline. And I just love the fact that it was present day and also into the past. So it was like historical fiction. And I just really fell in love with it. Like, I can see why people would hate this book, and some people would love this book, or just people are in the middle. But I loved it. Like, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a little bit slow paced at the beginning of the book, but that was going to be a given, I felt like, because usually some historical fiction books are like that at the very beginning, and then they begin to pick up. So yeah, I really enjoyed The Lost Apothecary, and I was able to read it on audiobook. I don't have a physical copy, but I plan on getting a physical copy now since I really loved it. So yeah, so that was another book that I read in January. The next book that I had read, and it was also on audiobook, and that is Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. This was a very hard and tough read for me due to the content warnings of rape, and also trauma and molestation, and also mental abuse. And there's a lot more content warnings, but that's just some of them. There's a lot more. Like, there's a lot I could give you right now. But like I said, it was a very, very tough read. The one thing I could say is I really enjoyed this book, and I felt like Echo was very courageous to write her story on paper and then made it into a book. And she also made it into a magical realism type of book as well, where she describes herself as a wizard. And I really love that about that, because that made her push through of all the trauma that she went through, and what her goal was, and that was to get into Dartmouth College. And she was able to do that. After everything she had been through, she kept pushing on, which I believe that's why it's called Black Girl Unlimited, because she was not limited to anything. She's unlimited. She could do whatever she wants. She can do whatever she wants, regardless of what happens to her. She's going to overcome it. And that's what I loved about this book. Of course, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I could never give it anything less, because it deserves to have, if I could give it a lot more stars, I would, but as for a 5-star rating, I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. And I just love this book. I do plan on reading her next book, which came out earlier this month. I think it's called The Chosen One, where she's a freshman at Dartmouth College. So I probably will end up reading that maybe in February or March for her second and sophomore book. But Echo Brown is so courageous in writing her story and sharing it with us. So yeah, I definitely, if you haven't read her book, I suggest you do so, but I will warn you, there are content warnings. And, also we follow her, we see her best friend, Jesse, who gets run over, and, his life isn't the same. And so there's just a lot of hard-hitting topics in this book, but I really feel like you have to read it because it's really deep. So I will suggest, if you do want to read it out of caution for the content warnings. But yeah, 5 out of 5 stars for Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown for sure. Hands down. Now, the final book that I just currently finished reading is Shattered at Midnight. This is the Meyer series, and this was by Danielle Clayton. This is a series where we're following families throughout different generations, and the first book was called The Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow. So if you want to see read on with this series, you definitely should read the first book first and then read this one. But I really enjoyed this book by Danielle Clayton. She did a fantastic job. I requested this book from NetGalley, and they let me. I requested it, and I got approved, so I was happy. So I was able to read it beforehand before it comes out on the 18th. And I really enjoyed this. We're following a girl named Zora, which that's not really her real name, but that's her name that she's pretty much talked about. That's her name throughout the entire book. And she is from Harlem, and she was sent to live with her aunt in New Orleans, Louisiana. And her aunt pretty much do without the shenanigans. You're not here for that. You're going to be a debutante. We're going to find you a great suitor, so that way you can have a great life. And she's still being haunted by what happened in Harlem and what caused her to be moved from Harlem to New Orleans, of her actions with her magic, which she does not have any control of, and no one was able to teach her how to use her magic properly. So she's in New Orleans, and she is a wonderful singer, and she's great with music and musical instruments. And she's has a stage name, and is known as Sweet Willow. And her aunt really doesn't know that she goes out to the clubs and sings, which her aunt and many others feel like it's devil music. And I will let you know, during this time in the book, this is in the 1900s, 1920s, where this is during the Prohibition. So you are dealing with, in the book, of bootleg liquor. And then also you have the laws of where you can't have interracial marriages or relationships, or a white person can't marry a black person. You know what I mean. So we're in that period in history in New Orleans, Louisiana. And she comes upon a young man named Philip, who fell in love with her singing and her musical abilities, like her singing abilities, which he considered phenomenal, and she sang as an angel. And she was also mesmerized by his musical ability of playing on the piano. And then as she's starting to, sorry about the noise in the background, but as she is falling for Philip, her aunt Celine has other plans for her, where she is pretty much getting her suitor together and introducing Christoph to Zora. Christoph is a well-off black young man, and his family is well off. They have money, so pretty much Zora will have a secure life and stuff like that. But Zora doesn't really have a thing for Christoph, but she gets it like that's her stability. So she's thinking like, maybe I should just marry Christoph, and I will grow to love him. But then she falls for Philip. But the thing is, Philip is white. And Zora thinks about that as well, of the repercussions of what will happen if they do get married. And they think like, oh, maybe we can go to Paris because our marriage would be legal there. So all that comes into play, and it's just crazy how back in the day, how that was, you can't help who you fall in love with, right? And it was just heartbreaking of, you know, how Zora had to think of, okay, if I should just settle Kristoff, but again, what if I don't really am in love with him? And then I have Philip, who our lives could be in danger. So we have that. And then also she still has this haunting of her, what happened in Harlem, where she accidentally killed someone. And, you know, her mother had to send her away because of it. And, you know, Zora's like, okay, maybe I should just get rid of my magic altogether. So she finds a conjurer, which her aunt sort of helped her find, a conjurer who would help her get rid of her magic. But the conjurer said that she would also have to pay the price of also letting go of her music, of her singing. Everything comes with a price, and that is the price you have to pay in order to get rid of her music. Of course, there's always a price you have to pay, right? It's just never like, just get rid of my magic, right? There's like, no, well, in order for me to do this, you have to do this, you have to do that, yada, yada, yada. So we have that going on as well. And she's still contemplating on doing that. But the conjurer did tell her that on October the 31st, that's the day that she'll be able to get rid of her magic. So prior to that, she spends time with Philip and Kristoff, and she's feeling more some love towards Philip rather than Kristoff, especially Zora's cousins actually have a thing for Kristoff, and they really actually like Kristoff as opposed to Zora. So, you know, we have all that going on. And then to the very end of the book, that's when it gets really heavy and really crazy, on where her Aunt Celine just was forcing Zora to marry Kristoff, period, because she was not going to have Zora marry a white man. She was not going to do that. She was not going to have it. It was against the law and stuff like, and what have you. And so they're still performing at these clubs, and, you know, Philip is still their pianist, but, you know, they try to do it where they don't get in trouble, because that was also against the law, where they couldn't have mixed bands, where they had a mixture of different where you had white and you had black in your band. That was against the law, so you couldn't have that. But then a lot of people didn't like the speakeasies and stuff like that. They felt like that was called devil music, so you had that going on as well. So yes, this is the 1920s, so remember that when you read this. So, you know, as all this is going on, you know, and Zora's aunt is trying to force her to marry Kristoff, and then she tells Kristoff not to propose to her. Then Kristoff gets pissed and just tells everybody her secret, that she's been going to clubs singing, and that her stage name is Sweet Willow. And that's when her secret just gets put out there, out in the open. And that's when she starts to run away and elope with Philip, and they're trying to figure a way how to get out of New Orleans. But now that her secret is out, there's wanted posters and postings all over the place with their names and faces on them. So they're like trapped in New Orleans, and then they're like, okay, maybe we can take a ship to Paris. And as they're trying to do this, as they're trying to leave New Orleans, they get caught and Philip gets arrested. But then at the same time, everything starts to come into play with the first book, how Philip was actually related to Elva in the first book. He's a descendant. And then Zora is related to Mathilda, who is the witch in the first book. So that's how all this comes into play. And it's like their families still come together regardless of what happens. And in the first book, we're in Germany, and now in the second book we're in New Orleans, and we're from Germany. Mathilda left Germany and went to live in New York, and went and married a black abolitionist in New York. So that's how Zora was in New York in the first place. And then that's how it's crazy how it all connects. So I really enjoy this series on how it connects to the descendants from the first book and into the second book. So I really appreciated the story. I will say this book is also really slow at the beginning, so definitely warn you about that. But I think it definitely does catch up. But I really would suggest you read the first book, because I will let you know right now, you're going to be lost if you just read this book and not the first book. I'm sorry, it will be confusing for you. So definitely read The Broken Wish before you read the Shattered Midnight, this book, Shattered Midnight. But Also, it's also interesting, we find out at the very end that Zora is pregnant with twins, and you know, she is writing to Philip as he's in prison, writing to him that, you know, I will tell our twins that you love them and stuff like that. So yeah, we have that. And she's in San Francisco. She's singing in San Francisco. So that's where she went after Philip was arrested. They were either going to go to Paris or they were either going to San Francisco, one or the other. And Zora was able to get a job in San Francisco, and she took it so that way she has a livelihood and she has, you know, stuff to take care of her family. So she lives in San Francisco now. So I wonder what's going to happen in the third book when that comes out, how that descendants is going to take place. But this book, I think I gave it a 4 out of 5, a 4.5 out of 5. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars altogether. I really enjoyed this book. I loved how it talks about the color line, but then I will say I did not like the fact that when Philip was pretty much, you know, saying that I want to marry you and stuff like that, and how he told his parents about Zora. But then again, he never really told his parents about Zora. He never told them about how she is Black. And she was upset about it. And this one phrase that I just cannot stand is when he tells Zora, I don't see color, I see you. And I just can't stand that, because you do see color. You're not colorblind, you do see color, and you're not embracing my Blackness. And even Zora got at him, got at his neck for that, which I'm happy that happened in the book as well. And she's like, well, if you accept me as, you know, who I am, as the color of my skin, then we have a problem. And he's like, I love you, and yeah, I know you're Black. And you know, that caught her off guard. And I feel like, you know, when you say you don't see color, it's like you're not embracing my entirety as a human being and as a Black person. But I know Zora got at him, like I said, and he put him in his place, and he was like, you know what, I'm sorry about that. And he does eventually introduce Zora to his parents, and they do realize that she's Black. But yeah, we have that too. That is just, it's crazy, right? That phrase, I don't see color. Yes, you do. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. I'm glad NetGalley was able to give me the audiobook for this. So thank you for that. This book does come out on the 18th, so you definitely can get the book when it releases. I'll be still be getting a copy of it because I do want to continue on the series, and I also want to have a physical copy since I have the first book, which is right here. I'll show you the cover. This is the first book. They had changed the cover. Oh, the paperback is a whole different cover to match with the rest of the series. I hate when they do that, when they change covers when they just started a series. It irks me. But this is the original cover in the first book, the hardcover, but the paperback is going to match with the rest of the series. But yeah, so like I said, if you haven't read The Broken Wish, I suggest you do so before you read the next book. But yeah, those are all the books so far that I have read in January. It's been a lot of great reads. There hasn't been any disappointments. There hasn't been like 2 1-star ratings so far. Hope so. Thank goodness for that. Let's keep up with the good reads. I really hope you enjoy my mid-month wrap up, even though my voice is going in and out. But if you did enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button and that bell to be notified when I upload more videos in the future. But thank you so much for watching, you guys, and please stay healthy and stay safe. See ya.